18 months after we went public, we had September the 11th. And so like, if you're, if you're a online travel company is like,
Not great.
was kind of brutal.
You haven't had the best luck timing-wise. You had 9/11
Yeah.
as an online travel company. You had the global financial crisis and the real estate market going belly up when you were building Trulia.
Yeah, no, don't hang around me. Don't have a car crash. Maybe
Oh
keep
my
your
God.
eyes on the road.
Maybe I'll
Oh,
FSD
thanks.
this. Oh, I guess FSD is unavailable. Yo,
Hi,
Pete,
how you doing?
what's up? How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Good to see you.
I love this office. I have some pretty great memories here.
Oh, it's a good funky office. It's like, it's fun, right? The styling, the vibe.
Lots of cool like gadgets and stuff like that there. Like interesting,
Yeah.
like old Apple. I think there's an old Apple Macintosh or something.
There is, yeah, a bunch
in
of
there.
old kind of tech and stuff, and no, it's cozy. It's like home-like and fun, and it's a good place to hang out.
Do you know anything about homes?
Homes,
Yeah.
real estate.
Have you dabbled?
I spent a bit of time in that industry.
Gotcha.
Well, I don't know. Actually, no, but I'm like, it's funny. I used to like, all these people would say, Pete, is it a good time to buy or sell a home? And I'm like, I don't really know. I was kind of a tech guy masquerading as a real estate guy for years and years and years. And so like, I don't know that
That's
much
actually so funny. I'm sure people were like treating you like a property developer, and you're like,
Yeah.
I'm more so building software, but
I think about, should I get this mortgage? What do you think? A TIC? Like, I have no idea. I'm just like a tech guy.
So yeah, I mean, you sold that company for low single digit billions. Nothing too impressive on that front. What did you learn about the real estate market that most surprised you?
What did I learn about the real estate market? Well, it was a kind of funny journey. Like I came to the US and I didn't know where Milwaukee was, let alone like stuff around like real estate. So, but it is like, I love industries which kind of like touch people, that like you can have a story about them and you experience, but it's like, the personalities in the industry are just crazy.
Sure.
But there's so many fun things. It's complicated. There's a lot of like, politics around
Yes.
it. Let's just say like politics, like maybe that's the easiest way, whether it's like national level kind of politics or whether there's local politics. It's just like where you live, it's just like, is really important to you. And it's so tribal, right? Like
It's
where
very
people,
tribal.
I mean, like here we are in San Francisco and it's like, there's all these subcultures like around different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
From the Mission district versus the Marina district versus the Soma. Like, so it's just like really tribal and kind of political. But
When you talk about the tribalism of it, I remember one of the things that NFX wrote was about tribal network effects. And the most sort of important network effect that you have is physical network effects. I think those two things combined can create something like San Francisco.
yeah.
Do you feel like you have any remnant like tribal sort of urges that you may have developed that in Essex?
So that is a very good question. I like to kind of like bridge that. The tribal. I grew up in Essex, which is kind of, I don't know. There's, I don't know what it is in America, but there's sort of like blonde jokes or kind of like, there's, basically the Essex girl jokes were the thing.
Got it.
Like, and Essex boy jokes were the thing. That was the area I grew up in. So, very like, so just outside London is sort of like a lot of the kind of people that did well in London would but they were kind of nouveau riche. They weren't the kind of like old money. It was very new money, which wasn't my family. My mum was a teacher, my dad was a professor, but that's where we lived.
Well, the only difference between new money and old money is you just gotta sit on it for a couple of generations. And I actually love new tech money as much as I hate to admit it. I love the aesthetic of new tech money and what people do with it, because it's just so quirky and weird. Sometimes it can be a little bit concerning, but my favorite thing about new money is the personality that comes with it. Now, whether or not that's the right type of personality is always up in the air, but it always comes with a flair, that's for sure. So yeah, I'm curious, when you first started and were at Last Minute, that company went on to become a billion-dollar company. But you left to pursue your MBA before that outcome. How did you make that decision, and what went into that?
So I came out of Essex and kind of I just got enamored by the internet, and so I met a guy called Brent Hoberman, who's a really good friend, and to this day, and he was the CEO of lastminute.com, and we were colleagues at another company, and he asked me to join him to get it going just when it was just in the idea phase. And it was like an epic journey. I mean, it was crazy, from starting from 6 people in a little room to going public 18 months later. Literally went public 18 months after we started. Through to 18 months after we went public, we had September the 11th. And so if you're a online travel company, was kind of brutal.
You haven't had the best luck timing wise. You had 9/11 as an online travel company. You had the global financial crisis and the real estate market going belly up when you were building Trulia.
Yeah, no, don't hang around me. Don't have a car crash. Maybe keep your eyes on the road.
Maybe I'll FSD this. Oh, I guess FSD is unavailable. Oh well.
So that was, but it was just, it was crazy. And I think after 5 years, it felt like sort of 20 years, in a normal experience. But I'd gone from studying physics into crazy comedy and just this wild set of experiences. And so in some ways I knew a ton, but in many ways I knew nothing, because I kind of felt I just never really had a proper sort of business working kind of experience, because it'd just been this crazy 5 years of stuff. And then just, if you're working in tech in the UK, you're just pulled over to Silicon Valley, just you just kind of want to come here, and you're just sort of intrigued by stuff that's going on here. So I guess I was so curious about what was going on here. So, and the company was kind of just changed a lot, from kind of 6 people to 2,000 people.
That is a big change.
That I was okay, I want a new adventure. And so I came to do an MBA, which I didn't.
It's cool what you're doing with GBX, trying to really support the British founder ecosystem here. How often are you asked by British entrepreneurs, all right, how do I make it out to Silicon Valley?
Frequently. Everyone knows this, that's in Silicon Valley. This is, Silicon Valley was not created by people that grew up in Menlo Park. It was people that kind of moved here from all over the world and started different companies. And I have a sort of soft spot for kind of high potential, highly ambitious people, honestly, from anywhere in the world, that come here and want to kind of live the Silicon Valley dream. And so that's...
You like them nice and traumatized.
Well, I just think sort of naivety is an asset.
That's true.
And I think and to kind of it's self-selecting. Your ambition level is kind of self-selecting if you're here and you choose to kind of leave the comfort of home country. I don't know if it's childhood trauma. I think in some ways you could argue that just staying where you grew up is maybe a sign of kind of like lack of independence, lack of kind of like, you know, that you weren't given the opportunities to kind of to see different stuff. It's not childhood trauma.
That's a really interesting thing.
Even though most Silicon Valley VCs are always trying to identify the level of childhood trauma. That I had a picture the other day, and the founder said, you know, you're the first VC that hasn't asked me to explain my childhood trauma.
Yeah. There's a lot of what's your story? Like, why is this your why?
I know.
It's like, I feel like a lot of people like reverse engineer their story based on what they're doing.
Yeah. I think there should be a section on LinkedIn, you know, that experiences, work experience, education, childhood trauma.
Yes.
That should be the...
That's so funny. I think it's a very American thing, actually, which is like really identifying with sort of like the trauma of your upbringing and like that rags to riches come up story.
Yeah.
And I find that in Egypt, it's a little bit more of like a taboo thing to talk about. If you were to like talk about these like very, very heavy subjects, people would be like, is everything okay? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, no, it's true in the UK. But like, you know, I haven't really any notable childhood trauma. But like, but yeah, it is kind of taboo. But it's funny that you feel the pressure to almost make something up.
Yeah.
You know, or have something there.
So after selling a company for, you know, a good $3.5 billion, what makes you decide I'm gonna build a venture firm? I know your hours are crazy based on what I've heard from your colleagues. Why are you not in Hawaii right now, sort of enjoying your life? What's going on?
Well, so Trulia was acquired by Zillow just around my 40th birthday, and so it was, you know, and I didn't want to sell. It just, you know, I was super happy, great company, great job, but it kind of, the bunch of different sort of pressures made it kind of the right thing to do to kind of combine with Zillow. And, you know, I was 40, like, and it's far too young to retire and like do different stuff. And like, but it's like, I think it's often the Silicon Valley way. It's like, you know, there's, you know, people kind of like here, they recycle knowledge and capital back into the ecosystem, right? You kind of like, and so I took a year off and said, okay, I'm not going to rush back into anything. And
a full year,
which I mean, I had young kids and seeing them and but I, you know, someone said to me that with something big like this, it takes a turn of the seasons to reset. So just you know, the renewal is, you know, 12 months, and so just it takes for you mentally to truly reset and figure out what the right thing is. It takes 12 months, and so like, okay, I worked my ass off for 10 years. I'm gonna take some time off, and so took a year off and a bunch of travel. This was a piece of advice I got from Rich Barton, who was the Zillow founder and Expedia founder. Like, go and travel a bunch, because then people don't bother you, and like you have a break and you reset. So I spent a bunch of time in the UK and in France. But you know, after like I spent a bunch of time, I think what I realized during that time is like what was missing in some ways was a sense of achievement, sense of purpose, sense of identity, and then community as well. So community, purpose, identity, and accomplishment, achievement. And so like, and you kind of want that. I think that's people don't work just because of the money. Obviously, it's important, but it's like you want all this other stuff as well. And so, and you can create a patchwork of different stuff, which I did. But, you know, really just the passion of getting NFX, to me, in many ways, just able to create, you know, fill those voids, those 4 different areas of doing it, and then do it with friends and do it with great founders.
The energy in that office is great. It seems like you guys are having a lot of fun, not taking yourselves too seriously. But the portfolio is incredible. And when I think I was 19 when I first started reading the stuff you put out there. There was some writing that you've had that's been helpful, but yeah, transparently, I've probably learned more just fucking up. And then kind of having some of that writing is like, I should remember this network effect stuff. It is valuable. How do you teach network effects to your children? How old are they?
They're 9 and 13.
Yeah, you should definitely start getting them young.
Yeah, getting them going.
Yeah.
I don't teach them. I think there's kind of more important stuff for them to learn right now. But like,
I disagree. 70% of value in startups is created through network effects.
Yeah, it's true. But no, I think they get it. I think they get it. But I'm glad you read the writing. It's kind of a bit of a labor of love, all that stuff. And I think it's like all the partners publish. And it's fun, right? I think it's just like that notion of teaching and writing. James grew up in a family of teachers. I grew up in a family of teachers. And so I think there's just something about like putting this stuff down on paper or on screen and it forces you to just kind of like think about concepts in a disciplined way, and it's hard. Like you don't necessarily want to spend your Sunday mornings like writing all this stuff, but it's great.
Yeah, people used to do that before ChatGPT. Crazy. And then also the visuals as well. That is the thing that I think is the heaviest type of work to do. Like that network effects map. Like that takes a lot of just like really thinking through things. I think that piece is iconic.
Yeah, well, we're like I think most product people are visual thinkers, and so it's like I think it's like you can write this stuff, but it just naturally kind of like you visualize it.
Do you know the idea of like shape rotators versus word cells?
No.
Okay, so in like internet kind of weird Twitter subculture, people think that there are people who are word cells who are able to communicate ideas just with like language. And then more intelligent people are actually shape rotators, like they're visual spatial thinkers. And so
I'm more intelligent.
That's what the shape rotators say. And like, well, the reason I'm struggling to get this into words is because the concepts are so advanced that I'm manipulating shapes in my head versus you, word cell, that can only communicate ideas in language.
I've not heard that. Interesting.
It's interesting. The fact that I shared that probably says a lot about the parts of the internet I'm on. But shape rotator and word cell.
Look shape rotator. Okay, that is a great skill to just think in different dimensions, right?
I mean, that's amazing. Literally physics.
Yeah.
Physics is literal shape rotation.
Yeah. I guess.
Why did you choose to study that?
Study physics? Mm-hmm. Why did I say? So part of it was like, I sort of feel that, when you think of kind of like academics and subjects, I kind of wanted to get as foundational as possible, because I sort of figured that you can learn other stuff later if you have a good foundation in something like physics, but you're not going to learn physics kind of later. You're not going to kind of like, for example, you could learn to take economics, like you can learn economics later, I think, because it's sort of relatable to society, but you're not going to sit necessarily in your kind of 40s and learn physics. So, and it felt just foundational Like when you think about
Interesting.
the world we live in, why is the sky blue? Why is glass colder to touch than wood? Like these sort of things are just like foundational. And then the stuff around the world and how people are and what they do and how cells work and all that stuff is sort of extensive from that. So I just thought it was like start at the beginning, which is kind of, it's, people talk a lot about first principles thinking.
And by definition.
It is by kind of definition, first principles thinking. So I think that was a big part of it. I mean, I think honestly, the other thing was that, I don't think I'm lazy, but I'm definitely look for shortcuts. And it was one of those subjects where I could just shortcut stuff in the sense that I think I was just quite good at it, I guess. And so I could sort of skip a bunch of lectures and then cram at the last minute and do okay at it. Whereas like if you're doing history or, languages or stuff, like the work that you would do, it just was like months and weeks of stuff. And so that was like, it was a shortcut to kind of, to have fun and do different stuff at university as well.
I have never heard someone say I did physics as a shortcut so that I can do it quicker. That's pretty exceptional. My dad would always like pound it into my brain. He's like, I would always talk about engineering and just how important that is. And he's like, yeah, because if you know engineering, you can do anything. And I was like, Dad, this is such a conceited way of thinking. Like there's other fields beyond just engineering. He's like, yeah, well, if you boil down any other field, it all is some form of engineering. And I'm like, I guess, like kind of, sure.
I guess, yeah.
Where have you learned the most outside of like the sciences?
It's interesting because like growing up in the UK, and it may have evolved a little bit, but the academic institutions are very traditional in the sense that they, the great, the great universities just don't change their curriculum that often, their subjects. And so, I chose physics because it was, traditional subject. But I did, like you said, I did an MBA and I found economics kind of like quite fascinating. Well, in the same way physics is the mathematics of the world we live in, economics is the sort of mathematics of markets. And I found that just quite fascinating because you observe, there are observations in the world, which such as why is the sky blue, and you can have a physics explanation. Then there's like, why does something cost this amount of money in the supermarket? Then there's a bunch of economics in that, and what about interest rates and all that stuff. So I was like, wow, this is I found economics to be fascinating, just the application of mathematics to markets. And then I think human psychology, I'm like spent like a lot more time just thinking about human psychology and human motivations. And I don't know, there's no mathematics of people, but it's more just like,
I don't know,
just understanding
James,
people.
I think wrote a piece that kind of spoke to that, which was something on your life is driven by network effects.
Yeah.
And I found that fascinating. Like your life is literally governed by the math essentially behind the people that you're around. And him breaking down like exactly why that is, I thought was really fascinating.
Yeah, it's a great piece. And it's awesome. Just like, the how to, everything from kind of work to marriage, like, how network effects are sort of a part of that. And, the network effect definition, the more people use a product or service, the more valuable it gets to every other user of that. It's why cities are the way they are. It's why, friend groups are the way they are. And once you understand that kind of network math, you're like, oh, maybe I should live my life slightly differently, or I was lucky to grow up in this place or in this family, and so that gave me this gift. So,
the clustering of everything, including lucky outcomes, large exits, fame, almost everything tends to like cluster in this really interesting way, and kind of makes you think like maybe it's not so much about knowledge and more just be in the right area, and it just kind of happens. Like you just have to absorb it.
I think there's so much truth to that. I think it's, but I think knowledge, it can be like, you want to put yourself in an environment where you're most likely to be successful. So like, I think for me, that was like moving to Silicon Valley in 2003 or graduating in 1998 and getting into the internet. Seemed like, that just like at the time it was accidental, but I'm sure you could actually like deconstruct that and say mathematically this was the right thing to do.
Definitely.
Look at this. We are under the Golden Gate Bridge. This is awesome.
It is beautiful.
It's amazing.
Your brother is an entrepreneur as well.
Yeah, I think he hasn't founded a company, but he is a terrific executive. So we kind of followed a similar path. He went, did engineering, economics and management at university, and then was sort of thinking about kind of politics, public policy, but ended up
just the classic PPE. Is that what he was thinking of doing?
Well, he did engineering, economics and management, but he studied at the Kennedy School of Government.
Cool.
Did a master's there, but then he got, I think, succumbed by McKinsey and then Sky Television, which is like a massive News Corp owned TV thing, and he got into he eventually ran Skybet, which is massive online betting company in the UK, and a few other international companies as well. So he was the CEO of Skybet, which phenomenal business. But it led like, I go back home for Christmas, and my mother is quite a sort of like, proud, upper middle class lady, and we'd have dinner, and she'd be like, well, we have one of my sons is an online bookmaker, and the other son is an online real estate agent. The amount of money I spent on their education, or like the amount of time I didn't spend much money, but a bunch of time. So I don't know. I think she was a bit surprised at the time, but it worked out pretty well.
I love that description. I mean, yeah, really, that's you're just an online real estate agent, and Silicon Valley is blowing all this smoke up your ass. And I think it's time to call it what it is. But it does kind of show the power of like marketing and branding and all these buzzwords that Silicon Valley has created. But the rest of the world's like, oh, okay, cool, like real estate platform, nice. I kind of like the simplicity of that. So you received an OBE from the Queen herself. That is not an honor that many Silicon Valley people get to experience. What was that like, and how? Yeah, I'm just really curious. What even was that like?
That's pretty cool. So like, Great Britain has this sort of tradition, I guess, of sort of bestowing honors on people that make a difference, and the sort of ultimate is like being knighted, like Sir Paul McCartney type stuff, and so a much lower level like thing is an OBE, and so it's pretty cool though. So it's like so that was a few years ago. I was awarded it during I think it was just before COVID by the Queen, and then sort of picked it up a few years later with Princess Anne. So you get this whole thing where you go to Windsor Castle, and families all there, and And then there's this kind of like, I mean, it's an amazing day. And Windsor Castle is just beautiful, but you go into this kind of, through these different rooms, and there's tea, and there's string quartet, and there's a kind of bunch of people getting their awards as well. And
Gotcha. It's just like British TechCrunch Disrupt.
Exactly. With less swag.
Cool.
Less swag.
You should have just said that.
I know. That was fun. It's good for, it keeps the parents happy. So
I'm sure they were way more excited about that than. Actually, no. I'm curious. Like, were they more excited at like the IPO or acquisition, or what was like a milestone moment that they were most proud of?
I think probably that, actually. I think it's like, it was nice to give them that. That's because I think it's, it's just a fun family thing, and like, it's not often you're going to get to go behind the scenes like at Windsor Castle and stuff. And so, and they're not sort of finance people, so they appreciated the IPO, but they weren't there, and they kind of didn't.
Everyone's got to pick the 3 letters that they appreciate. For some, it's an IPO. For some, it's an OBE.
Or NFX. Yeah. You see what we're doing there? It's all about just find 3 letters and then create some hype around it. DPI, whatever
GPT.
it is.
It is crazy to see like how much great stuff is being built, and companies are simply refusing to go public. What's the solution to that? LPs are kind of, knocking on some doors looking for some DPI.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it does feel like a real problem. I mean, when Trulia went public, we were like worth like 500-600 million, so quite a small IPO. There was, we went public in 2012, and so there was like, financial crisis 2000.
Time to go public.
Yeah, financial crisis 2008, and then things kind of recovered, and then by 2012, there was so much money sitting on the sidelines looking to kind of access like high growth, high potential companies, and so, we went public. A bunch of other companies went public around similar time and continue to do so. So, and I think there were a few, at the time, there were a few sort of more courageous, I'd say, companies that either had no choice but to go public to raise capital, or went public because it was the right thing to do. And so I think there is a kind of misconception. I mean, you see on the sort of on Twitter, like, what is the minimum scale to be a public company? Whether that is at $500 million in revenue, what is the number? I don't know for sure. I'm kind of not involved in the sort of capital markets to the extent that I have kind of full visibility, but I think it's probably a lot less than people think, or might think. Because I think if you have a great business with a great story, then money will back it. The investment banks perhaps aren't what they used to be, aren't as many of them, don't have the research coverage, but it would be great to have so many more IPOs, right? Just for the whole ecosystem, because it recycles capital.
Yeah.
It gives investment opportunities to the general public. It's like, I think, and it also, I think it, for me, it just made me a better CEO, and it made the company a better company. I mean, I look at some companies right now that might raise like a couple of $100 million at a multi-billion-dollar valuation. It's like you're in that environment, and you're crushing it, and maybe you are, but you could do the same thing in a public market, and you'd have the sort of the spotlight on you, and the discipline, and the kind of like the analysts kind of pushing you harder. I think it makes for better companies.
Fascinating. Do you think that, so investment banking currently is very much still a New York thing, I don't even think I really know that many investment bankers. And there's the old Mark Andreessen quote of like, software is eating the world, and it's done that to real estate, to entertainment, to vehicles. It seems like investment banking hasn't really been something that has been replaced truly by software, or has really become like a platform in the same way. Why do you think that is?
Well, it reminds I think it was a quote by the CEO of Goldman Sachs the other day, who said that 95% of the content in S1s, which is the prospectus document for IPO filing, can be written by AI. 95%. And the sort of power of these things is kind of phenomenal. But look, I think there's sort of like market making, sure, can be automated, like, and in part is automated, like, prospectus writing, a bunch of that can be automated. But really, I think it's sort of the accreditation and status, like you have Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan who are taking it public. It's like, that's the endorsement. It's like, how much better is a Harvard or Stanford education than any other school? A little bit, but actually not signaling. It's the signaling. It's totally the signaling. So I think with investment banking, I think it's like totally about the signaling. Like, these are the people that are taking it public. So they've got a great thing going.
How do you think about that as a VC? Because signaling is a valuable thing, but how do you not overly depend on that and then miss out on great talent?
In what way?
If you're meeting a founder that perhaps has went to signal school or that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think it's honestly, it can having a boilerplate resume can be an asset and a weakness. I think there are a lot of people that kind of hide behind these sort of like brands and stuff. It's just kind of who they are, what they've done, like, and that, I think that's, in the UK, there is a bit, it does feel that there's a bit more of a kind of, if you've gone to this school or had this job, then that kind of sets you up for a certain trajectory. I love it that in Silicon Valley is a lot more kind of like, what's the measure of a person and what they've done than other things. So I honestly, I don't really care too much about it. I mean, it's like, you try to extrapolate from historical experiences to future experiences, right? That's the natural thing. And just because someone has got into a great school doesn't mean that they're going to be a great founder. But you do look for these signals, right? Whether these are like, someone is a competitive chess player, or whether they are, they are, an incredible athlete, where they've kind of like just demonstrated this sort of commitment, this perseverance.
It's interesting the way that the signals themselves change and the value of them changes as well. For example, dropping out, I think, used to be a very strong signal of like risk taking and commitment. For some reason now, I intuitively don't feel like it's that big of a deal anymore. And ironically, I actually think that like deep scientific backgrounds and people who have accomplished a lot on the educational side is actually like more of a signal now. So the signals kind of change. How do you think about that specifically with respect to like not the schools that people went to, but like the level of education that people have?
I think I think in startups, like given the kind of like the pace of things at which things are going, and the sort of surface area of everything, and there's so much competition, what's really required is to go incredibly deep into a particular domain, whether that's like academically or kind of or otherwise, but just looking for people who are just like, they're the master of their domain. And that doesn't come with necessarily experience. Experience could be almost negative on the way to think about it, but whether you are but you meet an individual where they have gone so deep in a particular domain that it's you could see that they deeply understand the problem. They have a clear point of view about where this industry or this technology is evolving into, and are able to shape that and kind of and build into that. And many education institutions like encourage diversity and kind of a breadth of experience, but realistically, like the best founders are just incredibly deep in what they do. So that's the stuff that I would look for, that like they understand deeply their domain and have a sort of point of view of the future. Because then you look at that from an investor perspective, like, okay, this is founder product fit, or founder company fit, where you say, okay, this person is like so committed to this industry or so committed to this building this future that they're just not going to stop until it's done.
I love hyper-focused founders, but I will say there is something about polymaths that I'm also really drawn to. And recently, the way I've been thinking about this is like, who are founders that are not generalists, but perhaps like bifocal, where they're almost like, really interested in design and also very deep in biotech.
Yeah.
And those two things like multiplied together is a very rare kind of stack. I think, Airbnb, you have like very high sort of like sales and hustle capacity multiplied with like great design taste.
Yeah.
I think in your case, it's like a very strong sort of first principles, and perhaps this is the physics background, but also the ability to like, real estate and hiring in general is about really painting strong narratives and being good, just being a good communicator. And so those two things combined is rare. Are there any founders that you've met that you think are like exceptional in more than just one area, and like truly exceptional in multiple?
Always. I think you're 100% right. The innovation never happens at the core of an industry. It happens at the fringes, and it's like, what is the complement, or what is the kind of like the new path that these founders are forming. I was chatting to, you talked about this GBX thing, which is this sort of British tech community here. It's like
3 letters.
And it's and I was chatting with Imad, the founder of Mercury, the online bank, at an event the other day, and so it's a bank. It's a bank, it's a digital bank, but him and the other founders are just obsessed with design.
It's a beautiful product.
Yeah, and it's like, and he was sharing the story how like there were certain elements around it which, he had to redo a bunch of the back end, so the front end was just, they had 3 extra months to spend optimizing the front end pre-launch that they didn't know they were going to have. So just ridiculously polished in terms of that experience, and you wouldn't have thought how important design is for financial services, but it's true, it's critical. How just in the same way like airplanes or cars are like, okay, their primary function is to get you from A to B. It really shouldn't matter how it looks, but it does. And the same with financial services, it really shouldn't matter, but it does. And I think that, and the same with Jack Dorsey, who is like, okay, design of financial services it doesn't feel like a competitive advantage, but it totally is for those companies. And then I look across, the portfolio, and there's many founders who just have this. They often have domain expertise in a particular vertical, but they have, whether that is, and then often a technology capability, around that, or product building capability, or a sales capability. You got to. I totally agree. You got to have these sort of polymath capabilities to stand out.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is to really create a distinction between polymaths and generalists. Like, these people are not okay at a bunch of things. The thing that shocks me is they're really, really exceptional at multiple of these things, to a level where if they were to pick just one of them, they would be highly competitive in those fields. Yeah. And then they happen to be good at like one or two, or sometimes even three of them. And that's rare.
So my Trulia co-founder is this guy, Sami Inkinen. And we were classmates at
Is he Finnish?
School. He is Finnish, yeah.
I knew it. That name is so Finnish.
And he is, he's now a great CEO. He's a great multiple founder. And he's running this company called Voucher, which is originally like to remove type 2 diabetes. I think the mission is in like hundreds of millions of people or something, but it's done incredibly well. And but he's also like a almost national level triathletes and cyclists and all the amazing athlete. And really, like, when you sort of boil it down, like, he is excellent at learning, like, and it's process over product, perhaps. And so, and I think this is, you talk about these polymaths, it's not necessarily that they are, inherently skilled beyond in their domain versus the rest of us, but they've figured out how to hack the learning process. That they've and so they will learn, how to be a triathlete, or how to be deep into health, or deep into real estate, and they're just like, they design a lot of the kind of the way they spend their time around like optimizing for learning. And that's, when you think about kind of great startup founders, like, the problems of tomorrow are going to be different from the products of today. Or the problems of tomorrow are going to be different from the problems of today. But if they've just got this incredible learning capability, sure, I can be a great product manager, or I could be a great recruiter, and then I can be a great CEO. That kind of skill is what creates these polymaths. And that's, as you think about these great founders, they're just like learning machines, and they're like really thoughtful and efficient, whether that's surrounding themselves with people, or whether that's being really judicious about how to spend their time, or have that energy where people just want to give them information or resources. That's truly a gift.
Very true. I also think they developed this like skill of just like learning how to have high agency, where you could throw them into anything and they would just figure it out. And I don't know if that's a skill, or if it's like a not sure exactly how to describe it, but like a characteristic of someone. But I do think that you can learn to get better at just doing things, like going from like certain people. If you're like, okay, get a driver's license in California, there's people that can do it in a week, and there's people that won't do it for years. And like, what's the thing that makes some people do things really fast and just figure it out versus not? I'm curious what simple tests there are for whatever that is, because I like that attribute.
I think it's partly just your mentally, are you open to learning, and have you learned a lot, so that you are, I think the more you learn, the easier learning gets. And then secondly, the way you actually, the sort of techniques around learning. There's a really interesting portfolio company called Gizmo.ai, which is they're sort of like, informal, like, tagline is Duolingo for anything. And so it's an AI tutor and the team there are just like experts in AI and literally experts in learning. They've kind of spent their lives kind of thinking about learning, some educational backgrounds, some technology backgrounds, and they're designed, the app is literally like programmed to learn, everything from kind of like your high school maths through to, you can learn, SEC exams, or like, learn all sorts of both academic and non-academic stuff. So
if you could learn anything instantly, what would it be?
If I could learn anything instantly, I would. So as a kid, I had two kind of like aspirational professions. I either wanted to be an architect or an astronaut. Those were like, I was like, I think it's like a 7-year-old me who'd be like, what am I going to be when I grow up? And it was those two. And I think the astronaut is like, it may happen someday. But to kind of tick that, but I wanted to learn to fly. I'd love to be able to learn to fly. And I just don't know if I have the kind of like bandwidth or kind of time to do that, but it's something I'd love to do. And then the other is architecture. I would love to be, and whatever, the 7-year studying, like I didn't have the patience to do that. So those are to be a great architect where you could just like, and that's a learned skill. There's a bunch of technical stuff, but there's
you should just learn to fly. Why don't you?
Yeah.
There's this. My friend is founded a company that builds, I believe Astromechanica, if I'm saying it correctly, but that builds like these like novel jet engines that are far more fuel efficient. And he also has a pilot's license, so maybe he's someone you should chat with and just be like, all right, how do I speed run flying?
Yeah, no, I think it would be great. I mean, I think it would be a great. I mean, I don't know if I would use it that much, but you never know. And I think it would just like, friends that, I don't know that many people with pilot license, but I follow people on Facebook, Instagram and they're just like, oh, we went to have lunch in Santa Barbara today, it just flew down, or like, like stuff like that, which it changes your aperture, in ways which would be awesome.
Gives you a bird's eye view, if you will. No, you should actually do it. Like, it would be really cool to like talk to you a year from now, and you're like, oh, I actually just landed from Santa Barbara. What would be the first step? Like, if you, get out of this car, and then you're like, I want to start flying planes.
So
what would step one be?
I was gifted the other day a like voucher, one of those sort of gift experiences vouchers, like, which I think is, because I was talking to someone else about this, and it's like, it's sort of like co-piloted with a professional instructor, so they're really flying the plane, but you kind of sit next to the pilot and kind of have a go. So I have that's sitting on my desk, and I've not booked it yet, but that is the first step. So okay, I'll make a commitment to you that I would do that thing within 3 months.
Okay, cool. I'll follow up on that. There's this thing where like the thing that people want to do most is the thing they're like least likely to do. Like, I feel like there's resistance in like, and it's not that they don't want to do other things that they're not passionate about, like venture or startups or whatever. But like for me, I find like so much nervousness and fear around making music. And like I literally have like my recording equipment like in the car.
Okay.
But like, kind of like you have the gift card like on your desk or at your home, but you just won't like do anything with it. And I think that's a sign that you really, really should. There's like a
it's totally that. But so what about you? What do you want to learn?
I want to I think I want to learn a little bit more about like production, and a little bit more on like the technical side of
music.
Of that. Yeah,
music production. Okay. What do you play?
I sing.
Okay. Cool.
So I play like guitar and piano as well, but like the main thing I like love to do is like sing and songwrite.
Nice. Okay.
But one of the things I've been doing with music production, and this has been such a weird use case for AI, is like I will screenshot what I'm seeing and then tell it what the problem is that I'm having. Like I'll be like, I want it to sound more like warm, or I want it to sound more like more reverb, or I want it to sound whatever it may be, and it'll tell me like, okay, to do this, like turn this dial to this level, do that to this level.
And the AI does that, and it would tell you to kind of...
Yes.
Amazing.
Even to the point where I'll like screenshot a section of like the sound wave of a song, and I'll just be like, oh, how would you structure this as like a pop song, for example? And it'll be like, based on these sound waves, this from this second to this second is that. And so it's been a tool kind of for learning that's been kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, how you can learn this stuff. Like, I mean, people used to watch YouTube videos to learn stuff not that long ago, and now I think YouTube is, there's that learning process being substituted with ChatGPT. Learning stuff. Okay, music production. Okay, what's your commitment then?
Ooh. Okay, within the next 3 months, I will send you something that I have made, like produced and sang on.
Okay. All right.
Ooh, that's actually, I feel like almost a bit of fear committed to that, which I guess is good. All right, we'll shake on it.
Okay. Done. Okay.
Fascinating. Another way I think you can learn is actually by investing in stuff that's like adjacent to things you want to learn about. So even if you're not an expert in a specific area, for example, I found like genetic engineering really interesting. Yeah. And so investing in companies working on that, I've learned a ton through that. I know you've been making some space tech investments as a firm recently. Maybe you should talk to some of those founders about
I should.
Flying.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I should. I think baby steps, right? Just learn to fly before I kind of like a little plane before I kind of fly a spaceship. But that would be nice to become truly an astronaut. Like, I wonder how many people would do that in the next 10, 20 years. Is it just going to be the Richard Bransons and Jeff Bezoses of the world, or is it going to be like tens of thousands of people? I think it probably will be tens of thousands of people.
I think it will, and I hope it does.
Yeah, it'd be awesome, right?
That's cool. Like, I think you have more people that want to do things being able to just like have the agency to do them, whether it's like, I want to build a company, or I want to make music. I do still think we're going to have the same effect where like, there are the like absolute experts at something. Like, we'll still have, the expert professional astronauts, but maybe the class of like hobbyist astronauts will grow as well, and that'll be cool to watch.
It's interesting about the AI, like there's a sort of underlying fear in society right now that AI is going to kind of remove jobs, right? Which is not unfounded. When you look at certain functions, they just like take architecture. There's a lot of like drafters and structural engineers are kind of doing that traditionally, which has been removed by technology. Well, more continue to be in so many other industries. But the flip side of it is like AI can help you to learn things way faster, way more effectively than historically used to be the case. And you don't need to be necessarily kind of an expert, because you could be a co-pilot to learn these things. And so I sort of, a bunch of jobs are going to disappear, but a bunch of other jobs are going to be created. And the reskilling opportunities around AI, like if you start your career as an architect, then you could shift to become all these other things over time.
I think we'll see a transition from almost like an information-driven society to a more like creativity-driven one, where the question becomes less like, okay, what can you do? And then do that. Like, here's my skills, and then here's how I'm going to apply them to contribute, versus like, what do I want to make, or how do I want to contribute? And then like solving for, okay, well, how do I actually do that? What knowledge do I need? And so, it's probably going to be a thing where like the limiting factor is not how much do we know, but like the amount of like agency that people have to do things. Like, do you want to be the person to, you know, lead this project and shape it and have the creative tastes around it? And yeah, I hope that happens. I think it'll be cool.
Yeah, I think there will, for sure, there will be an explosion in creativity, because it's like people have the resources to kind of build stuff in a way they didn't have before in the tools out there. And I think there's one of the inhibiting factors just around sort of creating stuff is not having.
Wait, my ADHD just thought of something. If you get your pilot's license, can we do a part 2 of this on the plane?
That would be awesome.
This
could be the kind of the next series, right? Of your show, like we'll do it flying planes.
True.
That would be great. Okay, done.
Done.
Okay,
all right. Okay, perfect. Well, I'll need to check on that one.
Okay,
yeah. All right, cool. Have that documented as well. Excellent. I just need to perpetually do the thing that hasn't been automated yet. Otherwise, I'll fade into irrelevance.
But back to the learning thing, I think it's like, you know, there's often this in creativity thing. It's like the amazing thing about the AI, it does solve the blank sheet of paper problem, right? It does kind of give you a starting point to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, and I think the world we live in, access information, there's so many role models out there which you can like, which you're aware of, and they're like, whether that's founders who've been starting companies who and their story that is inspiration, or scientists solving big problems where they see where they have role models. And I think that's, you know, because the information's available, but those role models are surprisingly important to kind of get people to
incredibly
to kind of change what they're doing today and say, like, I could be like that person, you know. That's that acts as inspiration.
I love when people that I look up to or admire in some regard, like, make things public, whether that's like writing or video or really anything, because like so much of my learning in Egypt and what drew me here was just like, you know, the writing, very stereotypical, but the writing of someone like Paul Graham that you like read back in Egypt and you're like, oh, like I want to get closer to like where this was written.
Totally, yeah.
And in the meantime, I'll read this, and it's the second order impact, I think, of really exceptional people just putting out their knowledge is incalculable and very, very powerful.
Yeah, and it's accessible by like billions of people at this point, like which does act as inspiration.
I guess that's the thing that LA says its purpose is. Like, I would always think, like, what is, you know, I love, like, film and music, but I would say, like, is this a good use of time? Like, am I being productive or useful? Is this a waste of time? But I really think it's not, because these pieces of, like, media and music do end up actually shaping what everyone does. And I think that's probably the function of it.
LA is fascinating. There's so much talent there. I think it's just the I think it's a shame that so much talent is sort of not discovered in LA, you know. I think that's, you know, it's a great thing about the internet, right? How you can become, you don't need to necessarily be in LA to kind of to be discovered on the internet.
Yeah, I go back and forth on this, because like, as things become more and more democratized, the thing that's most ironic is we're actually seeing the outcomes cluster more and more into San Francisco for tech, or like into LA for film. And it's almost like, as a result of increasing accessibility, the hard constraint behind geography actually becomes more valuable.
You mean there's network effects?
No, they are. Seems like there's a narrative you're trying to push.
Yeah.
What's going on?
There are some network effects there.
There are some network effects there.
Yeah.
And
No,
it's just undeniable.
And I think you're right in that there's you have this you know, and I mean I don't know so much about LA, but I think the kind of like stuff in Silicon Valley is like it's so hard to be successful that by being here you kind of get access to kind of ambient information, which you wouldn't necessarily get.
I love the way you put that, ambient information.
Which is like, and you know, the sort of criticism is that, man, everyone in San Francisco is into tech and it's kind of such this bubble, which in many ways it is, but you go out to dinner and you're going to meet people and friends of friends that are in a tech company and they're like, and they're sharing what they're doing and that's interesting in what you're doing. And so you just kind of access this information, which is not published anywhere, but is, you know, can give you a little bit of an edge by picking up kind of what's going on in the ecosystem, whether that's like tactical stuff or whether that's learning things. And probably the same with like, you know, LA and kind of talent in the sense that you kind of like, in hyper-competitive markets, marginal gains can make all the difference, and like you're going to get these marginal gains.
I think beyond just the information component, and this sounds so cliche or corny, but like the vibes, like just the energy that you feel.
Yeah.
The thing that's been most, maybe this is a little bit pseudoscience-y, but I've noticed this feeling even when I'm not necessarily around people. Like just like being in San Francisco, I almost feel like I want to like do more tech stuff. And so what I've started to do is almost like just go to the place that is oriented around what I want to do. For example, if you know, I'm building this venture firm and I like literally drove up to Sand Hill Road, parked the car there and was like, let me just like be here and just watch and absorb the energy of this place and see what it feels like. And I don't know, it's like kind of an experience that has stuck in my head. And I think more people should do that if they are entrepreneurs that are maybe not currently living in San Francisco, just like visit.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's why like YC and like Entrepreneur First and others are great in this. You come here for 3 months and you can, if you know, you plug into a network and you see what it's like, and then it's like, or coming for school, and then you can double down or not.
And every once in a while they get stuck, and that's
true.
Kind of what we want.
How long have you lived here? Since Egypt?
Since Egypt, yeah. So I moved to the US when I was 17.
Okay.
And then I spent most of my time in San Francisco, a bit of time in LA, and did like a brief like year, maybe year and a half in New York. New York was cool, and I completely understand like why it's a city that people love so much, but just California is special. It's like California is a really cool.
Yeah, it's special. It's culturally as well as it's frontier. It's the edge, right?
Yeah.
You know, you come over from East Coast and you've gone as far as you can physically, which is somewhat self-selecting, creates the culture.
Interesting. And also, the one thing that I think about with respect to like the finance industries, I'm like, well, the finance industry is basically just like allocating to the tech industry now.
Yeah, it feels like it.
And so, I don't know, it's just like this urge to like want to be where the action is.
Yeah.
But on that, I'm sure you have a lot of founders that that you need to help. So it was such a pleasure, man.
Awesome. Yeah,
definitely.
Really
definitely hope to.
You know, I was just before I was thinking that sitting next to each other like this. I was listening to something the other day that women like to sit like facing each other, whereas men, given they kind of like in the savannah, looking out for prey, are actually much better off kind of like having conversations sitting side by side.
Interesting.
Which is like, I really enjoyed the conversation too. Maybe it's that, you know, primitive nature of like looking out into the.
My dad told me something about this, and he was like, he gave me this advice, and it stuck with me. He was like, if you want to have a good conversation with a man, don't just like have a talk. Play pool. Go
do golf.
Do golf, right? Do something.
It is, yeah.
Because like I think maybe a woman's argument to this would be men don't have the emotional capacity for like connection and intimacy that we need to be driving or doing something else in order to not get like eye contact is like overwhelming. Like get to the point, bro. Like
I'm sure that's true. Cool, man.
It was such a pleasure.
Yeah.
See ya.